Here. All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar focused on making CTE and work-based learning accessible for all. I'm Jason Eberly, Marketing and Events Coordinator with Transio, and we're really glad you're here today. We have a great panel this morning, and we're really excited for the opportunity to hear from them and allow them to share their insights and experiences. A couple of quick housekeeping notes. This is the second in a three-part webinar series produced by Transio and eDynamic Learning, focused on embedding equity and access into CTE and WBL. The last one in this series is June 7th, and it will bring focus on building partnerships to deliver equitable CTE and work-based learning. And I'll put a link in the chat so you can register for this one as well. Quick notes on the format. Feel free to drop questions in the chat and we'll try to respond to as many as we can. And we'll pause as we go for questions. Today's session will be recorded and made available to all who registered as well. And then I'd like to introduce our host today. She has worked for 10 years at the intersection of equity, education, and workforce development in Washington, D.C. The last 9 years consulting with government agencies, school districts, nonprofits, and for-profits to design and optimize processes and move people through large-scale change. And she currently serves as the Director of Sales Operations and Enablement with Transio. Our host today is Audrey Cruz. Audrey, thank you for hosting and being with us today.
Thank you so much, Jason, for that warm welcome. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here today with us to have this incredibly important conversation about making CTE and work-based learning accessible for all. We know the incredible benefits and impact. I'm sure everybody here knows the impact and benefit of work-based learning and career and technical education for our learners. That opportunity to truly connect what they're learning in the classroom to the outside experiences that they'll have and what comes after K through 12 education, what's happening in their future. So today we are incredibly privileged to have two phenomenal speakers with us, two people who are going to be talking with us about what it takes to make CTE and work-based learning accessible. And very, very, very special circumstances today. We have both a veteran educator of 34 years, as well as a business owner who actually runs a social enterprise and employs young people in his business. So we're going to be talking through this coming from both of those angles, from both the educator's experience and what it takes to make it accessible for young people through that lens, as well as through that business owner experience and how we really create the environment for young people to thrive, particularly those from under-resourced or more traditionally marginalized backgrounds and experiences. How do we ensure that they have access into these programs as well? So I'm going to introduce you to both of our panelists today. First up, Rebecca Kitchen has been an educator for 34 years. She is currently an educational consultant and professional development instructor working with eDynamic Learning and Knowledge Matters. She's also a former online learning program coordinator from the Matanuska-Susitna Borough School District in Palmer, Alaska, and has earned a degree from Biola University in liberal arts and elementary education and a master's degree from Western Governors in curriculum and instruction. I practiced that name. I think I got it kind of close. I'm so sorry, Rebecca, if I butchered that, but welcome. We're so excited to have you with us.
Thank you.
And now Addison Shockley is the president and CEO of the Ready for Good company in Lawrence, Kansas. Ready for Good is a social enterprise dedicated to helping youth prepare for their future through a program of job training, career coaching, paid work experience, life skills education, mentorship, and character development. Prior to launching Ready for Good, Addison was a case coordinator at the O'Connell Youth Ranch in Lawrence and earned a degree from the University of Central Missouri, as well as a master's degree in communication and a doctorate in philosophy of communications from the University of Southern California. Thank you so much, Addison, for being with us.
Absolutely. Privileged to be here, and I look forward to sharing.
All right. So Jason had mentioned if you have questions throughout this session, because this is going to be an awesome conversation, please drop those into the chat while we're talking. We'll have the opportunity to respond to some of those as we go through this conversation, but at the end, we'll line up a couple questions for our panelists to respond to as well. So as they come up for you, please feel free to drop those in chat. So let's get started with our first kind of opening question. Rebecca, you have a breadth of experience as an educator. 34 years is not anything light. So can you give us a little bit of an overview of how you've worked with educators and how you work with educators now, the learners that you've served over those 34 years, and the outcomes that you're trying to achieve through your work?
So I started teaching in the 1980s in Southern California. So my time as an educator has really been split 50-50 between working in Los Angeles and working in Alaska. So that gives me some different views of the situations that we have with kids in both of those areas. I am currently working as a professional development trainer with eDynamic and Knowledge Matters. I have been with the Matanuska-Susitna Borough School District for 14 years, and really my teaching has covered everything from kindergarten through high school. The last 4 years of my time with the Mat-Su Borough School District, I was working with the online high school program. So what we did was we offered online courses for any high schooler who wanted to take them. So those could be core courses that they needed to take, or it could be any number of electives. And we offered things through eDynamic Learning, which is where I learned about eDynamic, but also through some other providers as well, so that we could meet the needs of students who didn't have either staffing in their schools or didn't have space in their schedules to take those classes. So they worked with a mentor who would help them with goal setting and with their pacing. And then we had virtual teachers who helped them with the actual content. So subject matter experts for the content area.
So Alaska, I'm sure, has a number of access issues. And so it sounds like the staffing is kind of one of those key things. And I'm sure you saw that in Southern California as well. I think most of our audience members can recognize that the staffing and resources needed for this this type of program and this work can be quite challenging. So you really tackled that through that virtual experience and giving people access to that. So even if they weren't physically able to get to the location, or if you didn't have the staff on hand and the resources on hand, they still had those opportunities available through that virtual experience.
Yes.
And I'm just going to ask one follow-up question to that. Did that start, your process with that start during the pandemic, or was that something that you started providing access to prior to kind of our overall move to more virtual and hybrid settings?
It was an interesting transition because we had been doing this, offering these courses for probably 10 years before the pandemic, but the acceptance and the understanding of the value of those was much more clear after the pandemic, because it went from just an optional, hey, if you want to do this, techie students can take these classes, to this is something that everybody needs to be able to access. And it really brought awareness to those students. So instead of it just being an extra kind of thing, it became something that all students looked at as an option that they could take, and they knew what the courses looked like and they knew what the structure would be. So it forced them to dip their toes in with it. And so we did find that there was a lot more respect for the opportunities that we could provide after that.
Thank you for that extra information. I was curious about how that would have catalyzed things and if that access would have changed during that time period as well. Addison, tell us a little bit about how you are serving students in Ready for Good. So could you just provide us with an overview of your program itself, the learners that you're working with, and then what those outcomes are that you're trying to achieve through through Ready for Good?
Yeah, so actually Ready for Good is poised, or it's like positioned really well to work as a work-based learning program. And I say that because we haven't really worked with teachers or administrators yet. And maybe that's because this is sort of new to me. Jason Eberly was telling me about this just even a month ago, and I was the first I'd heard of it. And so there's some synergy between these worlds that's yet to be connected. But what we do is we do work with students, and we do provide what I consider work-based learning. It's just they're not enrolled in a course. They're not connected to a school that's also connected to us. So we're kind of doing this independent of any schools at this point. But we kind of take a step back. So I'll explain sort of what we do. We're a nonprofit 501c3 organization, which is really interesting because we're also a business. Like, I don't want to get too much into the weeds at this point, but I consider myself the owner. When sometimes people ask me, do you own this place? I say yes sometimes and no other times, because a public charity, technically there's no owner. There's a board of directors, and I'm the executive director of this nonprofit. And I can answer more questions about that later if people are curious, but we've set it up as a sole member nonprofit, which means that I'm the sole member. So in essence, I'm the owner of this nonprofit until I ever pass away. Because I took a lot of risk to start it. I invested a lot of my family's own income to start it. And so I want to have decision-making power until I ever become, disabled or pass away, at which point it'll become a public charity that's run traditionally with a board of directors and no membership structure. Again, that's in the weeds. But what we really do is we hire, train, mentor at-risk youth. And so what we do is we provide paid jobs in our nonprofit furniture store, which is currently our only social enterprise. Teaser alert, we want to start other businesses that do this, but more on that later. And then we give them sort of a job training curriculum, soft skills that employers are looking for, teamwork, positive attitude and enthusiasm, and then sort of technical skills, how to run a cash register, how to price things, and explain the furniture industry to them. So in a sense, we could be providing career-like training for people who want to work in the furniture industry over time. But by and large, it's more about a foundational work experience. Like, these are skills you can take with you to any job, any career. And we're working with youth who, like, the learners that we're working with they must be, in order to work and learn in our program, they must be currently in foster care or involved in the juvenile justice system or homeless. And so that's, by the way, the reason for that is because to do this as a public charity, you have to work with a disadvantaged class of persons. And so those are the groups we chose, because those three groups constitute what is known as transition age youth, which includes youth, like I said, who are making this difficult transition to adulthood while growing up in the foster care, juvenile justice, or home or unhoused. And so, and the goals or outcomes we're trying to achieve are essentially preventing crime is one, because what happens is these youth tend to be at risk of crime, of acting out, of depression, of high risk behaviors. And so we're trying to prevent those negative outcomes. And we actually have been able to secure some grant funding from the Juvenile Department of Corrections, Juvenile Services in Kansas, where we're located, because they know that youth in foster care are at risk of becoming involved in the juvenile justice system, and homeless youth as well. And youth who are already involved in the juvenile justice system are at risk of becoming more involved. And so what we want to do is give them work, training, mentorship, because these are sort of evidence-based practices or interventions that are known to reduce the likelihood of acting out, depression, and high-risk behaviors. And so that's kind of one of the outcomes, is like, we want to prevent kids from getting in trouble. The other outcome we're trying to produce is just job readiness. How do we take youth who've maybe never worked before and bring them to graduate our program going, now I get it. I have a resume. I understand what employers are looking for. I understand the norms of a workplace. on the most foundational level. And I'm set up, at least I know their expectations. So when I go to an interview, when I work somewhere else, I know what in general employers are looking for, because it's a different space than school or home. So how do we kind of give them the overview of that and then let them practice? Like, one of the cool things to kind of wrap up my answer here is we do the curriculum and then we do the practice. So we have a furniture store that's there. All the proceeds go towards this work of hiring and training and mentoring these youth, but gives them like a field to put into place and experiment with what we're talking about in the curriculum, which we have like a 22 lesson, what employers are looking for curriculum. And so I love that they are able to kind of immediately apply that content in a real workplace and try to, put boots on the ground with that stuff immediately. So yeah, and our kind of reason for all of that is just because research shows that early work experience, whether you're a disadvantaged person or like, high class or whatever, you come from wealth and privilege, whether or not, wherever you are on that spectrum, early work experience is shown to just correlate with higher earnings later in life, higher job satisfaction, just sort of like what people tend to think of as successful outcomes in general in life. So early work is just kind of an intervention. I mean, working and being in a workplace is helpful for your future, as long as you're not working too much and then dropping the ball on school. You want to be able to keep your grades up and graduate and all that.
Addison, I just first want to say what an incredible program you have, and the work that you're doing is tremendous. And I think for many of our audience members who are primarily educators, hearing from kind of the perspective of a business owner going into this, recognizing the need and developing this program, organically from your own research and looking into what it takes and how similar it is in the way that you've modeled it to what a lot of the work-based learning programs look like in educational environments as well, because this is what we know works, right? Taking that conceptual, providing the information, the learning, the trainings, I can't remember if you said a 21-step curriculum,
yeah,
22-step curriculum. But it's about taking that conceptual and making it real. So you give them the lesson and then they practice it. They're able to put it into play immediately to really start to develop those neural pathways, those routines, the understanding of how to contextually be in those environments.
Yeah, it makes so much sense, right? I mean, I didn't even know work-based learning and CTE. This world I had no clue about it till a month ago, but it makes so much sense to me. It's like theory and practice. I mean, it just makes it come alive.
Absolutely. And now the young people that you serve in particular are ones that often have access issues, and not only issues with having opportunities available to them, but even if they are available, actually being able to access them. So how do young people in situations like you've described, so you said foster care system, juvenile justice involved, or homeless, how do young people get connected to your program to take advantage of this opportunity? What is that access point?
Right. I mean, access is very difficult for youth who have system involvement, like the systems that I'm talking about, because those systems tend to be under-resourced. And that means that from the top down, it trickles down to the staff who work in, say, foster care institutions, foster care agencies, often have a huge caseload, often have 1 to 7, sort of, I'm watching 7 youth. If they're like operating in a group home, for example, the staff are going to tend to be watching like 7 kids with 1 staff while cooking dinner, while administering medications, while breaking up fights, while this and that. Imagine trying to have 7 kids say, hey, I want a job. Can you take me to McDonald's to get an interview? And the staff's like, yeah, let's get everyone in the van and go to McDonald's so this one kid can get an interview. It's very impractical. And so access on a transportation level is difficult, just kind of on like a caregiver level to support a youth who doesn't have a car, who doesn't have a license, who can't get themselves to work and back. Like when I was 16, I had a car. I could drive myself to my part-time job and drive myself home. But that's unfortunately like no kids in these systems tend to have that. Definitely not in foster care. I've never seen a single one, and I worked with hundreds of youth in foster care. Now, at least in the group homes where the needs are highest, the most disadvantaged youth who have kind of the most needs, they're not going to have transportation. And so you might have some who do if they're in a family foster home, and if that family foster home's really done a good job of kind of working with that youth. But I digress. So the access issues is sort of, how do they find out about us? Well, I spread the word to people who work in our city with these at-risk youth, people who work in the court system. I just kind of got the metaphorical phone book out, and now it's kind of email, Googled around the internet. Hey, I'm such and such. I see you work at the at-risk youth in the court system. Would you be willing to kind of help me figure out how to spread the word to them? And yeah, sure. Now these people have been very generous. Like, yeah, I'll do whatever you need. I love what you're doing. So ask and you shall receive, right? So we have a list of people I've developed, just kind of hand built, who work in juvenile justice, who work in foster care, who know these kids by name, who live with these kids even, literally, sometimes under the same roof, in group homes and so on. And I will send out emails. Is basically the strategy that's tend to work pretty well. Hey, we have 10 openings. We're hiring this summer. Here's a link to an application. I'd love to hire. We don't really turn kids down. That's probably a separate topic. But so yeah, access is on that level is huge. And then secondly, access on the level of just, I don't know how to frame it. I mean, these kids, if they went to, let's just say McDonald's, or let's just say Best Buy, hey, I want an application. Then they come in, they fill it out, they bring it in, they get an interview. Here's another access issue. Kids who've been through what they've been through are often socially awkward, belligerent, and difficult, and have no experience. And so they're not competitive. I remember Rebecca was talking about how do we make kids competitive when we were talking before this call. And so it's true that kids who are in these situations, they're by default, they're like at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of being competitive. That's an access issue, especially because they don't volunteer and say, I'm in foster care and I've been through trauma and that's why I'm awkward and difficult. It's like, no, these people are interviewing kids going, that was a weird interview. Like, I'm going to put him at the bottom of the stack. I'm going to put her at the bottom of the stack, And so employers don't know who's got disadvantages. And so access is sort of like, so that's why we started this business, because we knew we had to bring the jobs to the kids. And that's what we're doing is we're not going to cherry pick the best applicants who perform well in an interview, who do well. We're going to cherry pick the worst. We're going to just hire those. And that tends to be by default what's happening. So we work with like 48 youth a year, and in an interview, they'd probably be the worst 48 candidates. But that's exactly why we're doing this, because we want to help like even the playing field. And it's not fair because these kids didn't choose to be born into a family of neglect or abuse or drugs or whatever it is. Parents are in prison, parents are dead. These kids didn't choose that, so it's not fair. So how do we bring them up as best we can to job readiness? Given the fact they probably would never be able to experience early work if we didn't intervene, provide transportation like we do, and hire them, even though they're not really that hireable. I mean, they're not going to help our business very much. Let's put it that way. And so, yeah, they're going to slow us down. But that's the point. We're going to work with them, and that's actually the whole mission. And so that's why the IRS says you're a charity and you don't have to pay taxes on the revenue of furniture, because you're not the same as a normal furniture store. And so, yeah, I think that sums up access. How they access it is through these emails, and then caregivers sort of recommend youth to us, and then we meet them, and we're warm, and then they go, okay, this feels safe, I'll work there. And we give them a tour, and then they like, yeah, let's do it. And so, yeah.
I heard a couple of things that I just want to kind of summarize here. One thing that you said that is just really resonating with me, you bring the jobs and the work to them. right? So you're not waiting for them to just come in, but you're proactively going and looking for network opportunities, connections to people who have relationships with young people in these circumstances, so that you can create those access points and ease that friction for young people getting into your program.
Right. Yeah. I'll show up to places and I'll talk about the job where these disadvantaged youth are, and I'll explain it to them. It's almost like I'm applying to them. It's like, hey, here's something. Are you interested? Some of them aren't, but a portion of them are, many of them are. And then it's like, great, let's do this.
And then you also have that curriculum, which helps with that access too, because it provides them with more knowledge and understanding of approaches and confidence then in those steps that they're going to take.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think you get on the job training. You have to, wherever you get hired. There's always at least some basic stuff you have to be taught. But we triple that process. Like we're gonna make everything explicit. You know, it's sort of like job shadowing. They're gonna work one-on-one with a trained, like with me or with my colleague Andrew. And everything I do, everywhere I go, it's let me explain what I'm doing. And so it's a prolonged on-the-job training layered with 22 lessons. And so, and then it's over. You graduate, now you're quote unquote job ready. It's a transitional program. It's not meant to be permanent. So you graduate, you transition out, and then we try to connect them to work experiences elsewhere. And this it's kind of, we'll get to that later. So I don't want to delve into that yet, but.
Awesome. Rebecca, could you talk to us a little bit about how a young person would go about accessing your program or programs like yours?
Yeah, we work with a public school district. So, and we are what you would consider a value added program. So our high schools range, a graduating class might be 300, might be 400, might be 5. So a huge difference in the sizes and the locations of our different high schools. And we have high schools that are your traditional schools, and then lots of non-traditional independent study, homeschool, magnet, charter school kinds of things as well. So our program makes it so that students who have those access issues due to, maybe it's a scheduling issue. Sometimes it is because students are on sports teams that are like national sports teams and they're traveling. Sometimes it is because they want to pursue something like a CTE program where they're going to be able to take industry certification tests at the end of that program, and their high school has just enough classes for them to be able to graduate, but not to specialize in anything that they have real passion for. So we provide that opportunity for them to do that way. Students who are credit deficient, we give them the opportunity to recoup those credits, and there's no lockdown as far as you can only take one class per semester. If they're really motivated, they can accelerate that. And then also you asked about the whole thing with the COVID pandemic. We still have students who either they personally or their family members are immunocompromised and they want their students to be working from home. So they may have a hybrid program where they are on campus for certain things and then with us for another portion of their classes. So in order to participate in the courses that we offer, they really can go to their own counselor for their school. And then we have a counselor with our program that will work with each student's individual counselor to make sure that the courses meet their credit requirements and to help them just move through the program that way.
So I heard a couple of things here. So one is providing these like different alternative schedules or opportunities that might be outside of the traditional classroom education, being in that kind of 8 a.m. to 3 a.m.
Right,
setting,
right.
but like giving them different options for how they access that. And then the other thing that I heard is that they can work with their guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor then works with you to really ensure that it aligns, that it's something that's going to help to push them forward toward their goals. And that is something that I think is a challenge in a lot of educational settings, is that we don't always know exactly where students are. And so providing them with that kind of tailored guidance can be very challenging, but that is absolutely something that contributes to access, because if you can tailor something to the young person and their experience, it's going to help them to access what they need much more effectively. That's wonderful. And so I want to know a little bit more about this, because again, you've worked in this environment for a really long time, Rebecca. Why do you think it's important to provide CTE and work-based learning opportunities for traditionally under-resourced students? And why do you think it's so important to reduce that friction and create that ease of access for these young people?
Well, students who are in smaller schools definitely we have some really amazing, incredible students in those schools, and we want to be able to provide them every opportunity to just shine in those areas. So this allows them to take whatever passion they have and move forward with it. If you have students who are struggling in some way with a traditional school schedule, and you can provide them an opportunity that maybe it's not a college track that they want. Maybe in Alaska, there are students who are like, their main goal, make it to the North Slope, work on the pipeline. Those are not necessarily kids who need a college degree in order to be able to go do that and make more money than a teacher would ever make, for sure, and a lot of other people with really big educations. So this really opens up and almost legitimizes those choices for them. It gives them that dignity of, I may not be college bound, but there are these other things where I can have skills, I can graduate with certifications that I can put to work right away. And then also there are programs, two of the programs that I work with are eDynamic Learning and Knowledge Matters. And the idea of being able to put together, okay, here are online courses, here are work and internship readiness courses, and then here is a virtual internship that a student can do where that student would never have access to an actual in-person internship, but then that internship can be recorded so that when they apply for a job on LinkedIn or any of the platforms where really there's a lot of job hunting going on, they have something that says, yes, I have done an internship in this area, and here are the things that were required for that, and here is an industry approved presentation that I had to do in order to complete that internship. So it's if we have students who are college bound, that's a track that is pretty familiar to educators. If you have a student, they're going to college, we can figure out scholarships, we can figure out resources for those students, but this gives them another option that is not that traditional option, that may be a better fit and something that they really have a high interest in.
Absolutely. And I think that has definitely been one of the themes of kind of our series, is really looking at these different options and recognizing that not all young people are college bound. There should be other well-developed opportunities, but we've been so focused on that college pathway for so long that, as you said, Rebecca, some of these are still underdeveloped. We don't have all of this set, but young people should have that opportunity. And young people who are going to college should also have that opportunity, right? Young people should all have the opportunity to have this job readiness, employability, work-based learning experience to be able to match that conceptual with the practical. Addison, I'm going to ask you kind of a similar question to this is, can you provide us with a little bit more of an overview? You've already talked a bit about, what your program looks like and how you work with the young people, but could you tell us a little bit more about what they're doing on a daily basis, what skills they're focused on, and then ultimately why you think it's important to be providing these work-based learning opportunities for those learners that you work with?
Right. So the youth that we hire tend to do exactly what we do. And I haven't told you what we do really. So what we do is we purchase and resell what's known as liquidated furniture and home goods, which includes customer returns because something's the wrong color and it doesn't look right in that corner, and it came in damaged. So I paid $100 for this and it's got a dinged corner. I'm going to return this. And then and then shelf pulls and overstock things. So someone somewhere decided 2,000 of this couch needed to be manufactured and only 1,500 sold. The other 500 are in a warehouse taking up space. Next year's stuff is on its way. So last year's stuff has to be gotten out of here. So they liquidate all of that stuff together in the mixture of customer returns and overstock stuff into these truckloads. We buy it, we build it, we resell it. I say build, and that's one of the things the youth do. It's because it comes in cardboard boxes with Allen wrenches and instructions and screws and bolts. Kind of like if you bought something from IKEA or Target and you had to put it together yourself. Well, that's like 100% of what we do. We're hand assembling. We're not using power saws. We're using like basic hand tools, screwdrivers, Allen wrenches, and we're following instructions and we're putting together furniture so that our customers don't have to. And as we go along, we're fixing stuff. And so they're getting technical, like basic hand tool skills. They're practicing following instructions. They're practicing working on a team with somebody. Hey, hold this for me while I put this screw in because it's just awkward and need someone to balance it for me. And so, or this thing's heavy. We got to lift this as a team and get it on the table. And so a lot of these soft skills are being practiced, like teamwork, keeping a positive attitude, being enthusiastic when things get monotonous. Every cardboard box has to be flattened out. Every piece of styrofoam has to be thrown away. And sometimes there's a lot of that stuff. And somebody's working on that for a couple hours, or we're taking turns, but it's not always exciting. So when you work, a lot of what you do in any job, like half of it or more, is probably not going to be fun. So keep a positive attitude when you're doing the not fun stuff. So the youth are doing what we do. And so we also fix and repair stuff that comes in. A lot of our returned items are going to have a broken chair leg that we're going to re-glue. We repaint donated furniture. And so we will take an old dresser that somebody drops off, and we're going to show a youth how to clean it up, put a fresh coat of paint on it, remove the old pulls and knobs, put on some fresh ones, and then how we can price it and put it on the floor and see that thing sell like a hotcake within a day. For hundreds of dollars, when somebody gave it to us, it's probably worth $50, but they gave it to us for free because we're a nonprofit. And then social skills. I mean, all day long, there's customers coming in. Hey, we're teaching youth how to greet customers. We're telling them, how to go up to a stranger, break the ice, say, this is the sale today. If you need anything, let me know. And then how to leave them alone and not follow them around and say things like, hey, do you want me to follow you around? Because no, they don't want, you know what I mean? And so when you don't know, you don't know. But we've had youth do things like that. And it's like, hey, well done. Like that took courage to go up to that person and greet them. But let me give you some coaching here. Don't say it like that, and give them like 5 minutes to just shop and then come back and be like, hey, are you guys doing all right? Let me know again if you need anything, but just give them space and to not stare at them. So it's like there's a lot of basic social skills, and it's just kind of like observing the youth. Some are great already. They're probably better than I am. And then other youth are like disaster level social skills. And so it's like we're just training them in some basic stuff. And so, and then some technical skills. They're learning how to use a point of sale system. on a computer, how to use a scanner to scan barcodes, how to price something, and how to use social media to post something that we want to advertise on Facebook Marketplace or on our website. And so, and then going on deliveries and picking up donated furniture. You know, we run errands to the hardware store because we need bolts because this chair didn't come with enough bolts, or going into a customer's home, you know, small talk while you're carrying a couch into their living room. You know, just sort of a lot of this stuff is really kind of assumed to be things that you don't teach. You just kind of pick up by osmosis in society, but you can teach these things. And that's really exciting, is how do you name and teach things that people don't think are skills, and then provide those along with, like, day to day. What else they do is these 22 lessons. Like I said, teamwork. We're going to talk about employers have been surveyed in all industries, and they're looking for X, Y, and Z. And so we're going to practice X, Y, and Z. So you two are teaming up today. And what you do on a team is you don't, you know, insult each other and start yelling at each other. You have to kind of get along with people. Because what is the saying? The people you like the most are always right next to you. Or community is the place where the people you like the least always are. And that's what workplaces are. So you got to figure out how to get along. And so, and then, yeah, let's see. Why is it important? You know, I think it's important because there's just an absence of this opportunity for these youth. I mean, their life consists usually in, I go to school, I don't feel seen there, I don't even fit in, and then I get moved because I'm misbehaving at home and they can't handle me. So now I'm in a new school a month later or 4 months later, and I still don't fit in. And then I go home and my house is chaotic because I live with a bunch of crazy kids who are yelling at each other all the time. And so I'm yelling at people too because I'm always stressed. And it's just kind of like this cycle of stress. And so how do we get them out of just home and school, which tend to be filled with anxiety, put them in a workplace where we're like, this is going to be challenging but safe. You're here working one-on-one with an adult who knows what you're going through. We've been trained in trauma-informed care and understand pretty well the place you come from, the damage it's done to you. And so there's a ton of grace. It's like, how do we slow down? And I mean, a lot of it's just building relationships. When you do this work, you realize it on the surface, it's about workplace training, but also, like, deeper down, it's just about building a friendship, a trusted relationship, a mentorship relationship with a youth who, more than anything, he needs a friend. He or she needs just to be somewhere where they can kind of relax and put their shoulders down and just kind of breathe and just feel seen and like, I'm not going to get yelled at here. And this place is fun. I mean, we try to have so much fun. We've got music. We've got laughter. We're not trying to just work. In fact, one of our missions is just to build relationships. And so we're a strange place to work because it's about work, but it's also about just developing youth where they're at.
And I think that mentoring and coaching component, right? I want to elevate that here because that is so much a critical piece and foundation for young people being able to learn, particularly those in the environments that we're discussing. And as you said, Addison, so frequently we take for granted those skills, those experiences, and just assume that people will learn them through osmosis, through the context that they're within. And so those relationships, the mentors that are in their life, the adults, the one-to-one kind of working experiences that you're providing them where they're coached and guided through that becomes the foundation for learning and for relearning how to engage in contexts. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Rebecca, I'm going to kind of turn to this, and then I know people are going to be shocked, but we are coming up on the end of our session. We only have 14 minutes left. So I'm actually going to ask you this question, Rebecca, and then I'm going to open it up to a couple audience questions because I've been seeing them just coming in the chat. And I know a lot of people have a lot of questions for our panelists today. So I want to make sure we address a few of them as well. So Rebecca, what are the biggest challenges that you see under-resourced learners facing as they prepare to identify and pursue a career? And how are you helping to address these challenges?
So because you're pivoting, can I also pivot at the same time?
I think so, for sure.
Because I see that, okay, I hear your question and I feel like I've touched on that already as far as just it's important for them to know what's available to them and we give them that support. But I see a question that came through about English language learners, which is something that we haven't really addressed is English language learners and then students who come to us with an IEP or a 504 plan. And how do we make sure that those students have the same kind of access that a student who has a scheduling or just an opportunity issue going on? So can I answer that question instead?
I would love for you to answer that question. Yes, please, Rebecca.
So within the online curriculum that we use, and I'm going to speak specifically about e-dynamic learning right now, but there are lots of different online curriculum programs that you can use. So those are used like a digital textbook. But the great thing that is integrated within those, the ability to put the information about the student's IEP and the accommodations that they might need within that platform, so even when you're building a student profile within there, you can limit the number of options that they have when they come to take a multiple choice test. You want to only give them 2 options instead of 4. You can turn off timers so that students who need extra time or who have a lot of anxiety because that timer is ticking and then they can't concentrate on what they're doing, we can remove timers from tests. We use within the school district program, we have part of what our counselor does is making sure that 504s and IEPs, that any accommodations that we can provide are being implemented. And then we also have the virtual teachers talking with case managers so that those students have the support that they need and they're not just floundering in there, they still have those accommodations. The other thing that is really nice is I have seen students who are English language learners who use the translation tools within eDynamic, and they take the course and they are listening to the entire thing in their native language. So the tools that do that, there are close to 100 languages that they can choose from. Some of them, they just see it written. Some of them, there is the audio portion of it as well. The tools include things like screen masking. If you have a student who has difficulty tracking, there are dictionaries, there are Pictionaries, there are highlighters. So there's a lot of tools that students can be taught how to use that will help them with different disabilities that they may be struggling with. And the translation tool, it can be layered so that if they are reading it in English, they want to click on the dictionary and then they want to translate the dictionary into their primary language. They can be taught how to use these different tools that will give them whatever level of support they need in order to be really successful.
Thank you so much for addressing that. That was one of the questions that caught my eye as well, and is absolutely something that many of our educators face in terms of providing that access. That language barrier can be enormously challenging, and being able to provide opportunities that are robust and truly helping to take that conceptual to practical when there's that barrier can be tremendous. So thank you so much for providing some insight into that. Addison, did you have anything that you wanted to follow up with that? I don't think that English language learners are as much of a focus of your program, but I just wanted to kick it over to you in case you did have anything that you wanted to add to that.
I was just saying we're blessed to have a staff member who's a former Spanish teacher at a high school, And so he's fluent. And so when we have any youth who have that particular primary language, you know, he's able to kind of take the lead on answering questions, clarifying things. We haven't had any youth who struggle with English on a basic level yet. And so it hasn't been an issue yet for us too much. But I could see in the future where, you know, if we didn't have Andrew, we had a youth who was struggling, it'd be difficult to help that youth.
Absolutely. I did see a question that came in the chat for you specifically, though, Addison. So I'm going to ask you this while I have you.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier about going to where the kids are. What are your best strategies and places that you go to do this?
Yeah, so strategies, it's kind of developed organically. Like, I used to work at a foster care group home. It tends to be the largest one in our city. They have 5 homes with 8 youth per home. And when we started this social enterprise, I had great connections there and didn't have any difficulty. I was a known entity. And so I didn't need to kind of like, you know, it wasn't like a cold call. Hey, we're doing this. Will you like, you know, do you think your youth would be interested? It was like built-in credibility already. And so, but other people, I honestly don't have great strategies because I just Googled around and found people that might know youth in these categories, homeless shelters, district attorneys who do sentencing for juvenile youth. And I just said, hey, this is what we're doing. And I'm trying to spread the word. And I'm assuming you have people on your radar that might be eligible for our program. Can you help spread the word for me? Can I include you on an email list that I send out quarterly that talks about openings and applications? And would you be willing to help spread the word? High school counselors, high school, not so much career counselors, because I hadn't thought of that before, but or work-based learning coordinators. I hadn't thought of that because I didn't know they existed, but like just social workers on staff who are there for kids who are having a bad day. They're on our list and they're happy to be on our list. And so, yeah, I mean, but if I'm trying to think who's asking the question and why they're asking, how I can be helpful. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, if you have a program like this that you're trying to connect youth to, I don't think it's a hard sell. If you can just spread the word to whoever might know these youth, people tend to be really like, sure, yeah, I'm happy to tell youth about this opportunity.
And Addison, one thing that I want to tie back to some of our previous webinars as well is this idea of using networks and existing relationships. You are only one person, right? You can only go to so many places and talk to so many people. But if you encourage others to then also spread the word and work within their networks, our impact and our amplification is exponential because they then are able to spread the information about your program to all of the businesses they know and all of the other individuals they know, and then so on and so forth. So I just want to really emphasize and encourage this concept of not only using the relationships we have, but also then encouraging those that we're in relationship with to be able to spread the word for us, and providing them that information, those resources, the ask, the call to action. Could you please do this for us?
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So we have 5 minutes left. I think we've addressed all of the questions in the chat. So I'm going to ask one final question to the two of you. I like to kind of finish out with advice for our audience. So Rebecca, let's start with you. When it comes to making CTE and work-based learning accessible for all, what is your number one key piece of advice that you want to leave our audience with today?
Think outside the box. Find out what your students are interested in, and then think outside the box to help them be able to fulfill those passions. Because if they are passionate about what they are doing, they're going to be more successful.
I love that, Rebecca. Thank you so much for that last piece of advice. Addison, when it comes to making work-based learning experiences accessible for all, what is your number one takeaway or key piece of advice to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I would just say, why not Google employment social enterprises in my area? I mean, I know of at least 150 in the United States. There's a network called RED-F, R-E-D as in dog, F, and they train leaders of employment social enterprises. That's the technical key term you want to look for, because what that is it's either for-profit or nonprofit. Social enterprises can be either, but the ones that we're talking about are ones that are about employment. They're designed to give training and employment to disadvantaged youth and young adults and even just adults. And so many focus on youth. So look for those in your city or county, because you might have one in your backyard that you don't know about. And they might not have anything to do with furniture. They could have to do with cooking, becoming a chef, food service. There's so many different types out there. And this is something that's growing. It may be something that comes to your city or area later that isn't there now. I mean, you may be the person to do it because it's working. Society needs it. And I mean, the results we've gotten has been just huge. It was like we hit a home run. We figured it would work, but people love it. I mean, customers love it. The people who care for the youth that we work with love it. It's the only thing that gets them off the couch is what we're told. And so, yeah. Anyways, that would be my thought is look into that.
Love that. Yes. If you are not familiar with social enterprises, or if you're not familiar with those in your own area, please check these out. Thank you so much, Addison and Rebecca, for being with us. Oh, we have a guest. Thank you so much for being with us today. This has been a tremendous conversation. Your insights have just been fantastic. And I know that our audience is going to have lots to think about and lots of ideas of how to provide greater access to CTE and work-based learning experiences. Thank you so much, audience, for being with us today. We hope to see you at our last session of this webinar series with eDynamic and Transio on June 7th. Look out for the recording that will be coming out. We'll have a follow-up email that will be coming within the next few days with that recording. Please feel free to reach out to us at any point if you have questions. We can't wait to see you for the next session. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you, Audrey.
Bye.